If you're new to the channel and you like what you see, well, welcome to Life for Gaz. Now, I try my best to upload a new video every single Wednesday, and if you want to keep up to date with that, make sure you hit the subscribe button, and more importantly, ring the bell to get all the notifications. Hey guys, welcome to Life for Gaz, and finally lockdown's ended, so I've managed to get back out to the beach and managed to go and see what fish have turned up on the Fylde coast in the last 7 and 8 weeks. So fingers crossed we're going to see some fish tonight. So once we got there and we'd made it down onto the beach, what happened was we got there a little bit too early and we could see a sandbank uncovering with a deep gully in front of us. Now we couldn't cross that gully straight away, but we took the advantage, me and Stuart, to go out and look for some bait, because this is a time of year where you'll sometimes be able to pick up the odd peeler crab. And after picking up 1 or 2 rocks, eventually you find the rock where the crabs are hiding. And underneath this rock, I found a peeler and also found a softie as well, and they'll do nicely for bait. And now on to the next task at hand. Now this is a very hard task sometimes, wading out across gullies, especially when there's a lot of rocks, there's lots of trip hazards, there's little holes. What you need to do is just try and find a safe passage across. Now what I tend to do for this is I tend to try and just walk in a straight line. If I start hitting bumps and little divots, then what I'll do is I'll go back, go up the beach a bit more and find another point to cross. And the reason for that is you don't want to try and get across and then forget what way you came. So what I'll do is I'll wade out across a gully in a straight line. Once I'm confident that I can get to the other side with my gear, then I'll pile up a little pile of sand over on the other side, and that gives me a marker, something to aim at. Now I'll always have my marker back on the beach as well, and for this case I was using a tripod, and all you do is you keep the two things parallel to each other and walk the line between them, and you'll generally get across quite safe. Now why I do this when the tide's going out is because it's only going to get shallower, so there's no danger of it filling back in behind me until the tide starts flooding again, by which case you need to be smart enough to be off the beach before that happens, because a flooding gully can be really dangerous. Now once across the gully I got set up and put the rigs on which I was going to be using today. Now I did start off with a 3-hook flapper rig, and that had obviously hooks on there which were sort of trigged in for catching bass, catching sort of flatfish, also going for fish which want to come up in the water a little bit more. And then I had an over and under which eventually changed to a clip down later on in the session. But they're the rigs that I was using. The bait I was using was a whole mix of bait, a whole range. We had worm, I had razor, I had a bit of mackerel, a bit of squid, some shellfish, lots and lots of different bits and pieces. And the reason for this was it's the first chance I could get out after lockdown had finished, so I didn't know what fish were out there. So I thought if I sort of open up my tactics to quite a wide range, chances of me finding some fish should be fairly high. after waiting around about 3/4 of an hour, having a couple of casts and tracking back with that tide, I managed to pick up my first fish, which was a lovely 31cm 9oz place. So what a way to come back after the lockdown. Now unfortunately my second camera was the only one filming at this stage, and that's because I just started changing the battery on my other camera when I got the bite, and I'm not going to miss the bite, so I just hit into that fish and pulled it in, and I'm glad I did because I do love the place. Following that place, after recasting, within about 10 minutes I picked up a little rattle on the same rod. Now I picked up this rod, hit into it. I couldn't really feel a lot of weight there, but like I said, it was only a very small bite, and I did have some small hooks on, so I thought I'll bring it in and see what was there. Now as I was doing this, my other rod gave me a great big slam as well. Now, this being the case, that was a much stronger bite. I thought, well, chances are there's going to be something there. So I picked that rod up and cracked down into that one. But unfortunately, whatever had given me that bite, I missed during the process of putting my other rod down. So then I continued to bring in my first rod, and this first rod produced a second species of the night, a tiny little pin whiting, which obviously later got released. And there, over on the same rod again, we're bringing in the third species of the night, and this is the first of a little succession of dogfish. Now this may explain why over on the up and over I was starting to get lots of fairly strong bites that were letting go very quickly, and up and over rigs for dogfish I don't ever find are particularly helpful. Up and over rigs are better for fish like thornback ray and fish like smoothhound, which I was secretly hoping may have been about that night. So after persisting with the up and overs for a bit longer, then of course missing bites, I decided it's probably a good idea to change over to a clip down and give me a little bit more of a better bite indication, as well as being able to sort of reach contact with that fish without having to break the weight out of the ground first. Now finally, after a multitude of missed bites over on the up and over rig, I changed over to that clip down I was talking about earlier. And it didn't take long for me to hit into the first fish over there, and that it was a dogfish. Now interestingly enough, this fish managed to hold on to the bait all the way in until I took the tension off the line, where the fish managed to spit the hooks. But still, it was great to make sure that I'd caught a fish on both of my rods. Now, dogfish are one of the fish up here that lots of people like to try and avoid catching. But believe it or not, down south, we actually used to eat them quite a lot. And you can buy them in fish and chip shops as rocking chips. So after a few people have actually sort of commented about that, and a few people have asked me about it, what I'm going to be doing in the future is a catch, cook and eat with dogfish. And it'll probably be rocking chips that I cook with it. So make sure you keep your eyes posted for that, and hopefully I'll get round to putting one of those catch and cook and eats with the dogfish on at some point this year. And this dogfish, unfortunately, was the final fish that I caught tonight. Now, being low watering, the tide is starting to turn, and you've got to be really careful of gullies filling back in behind you. So one of the hardest things about low watering is about knowing when to leave, because the fish always seem to start to come onto the bite just as the tide starts to come back in. But I have been changing the levels on my videos, so check if you want to leave a comment, let me know what you think. Let me know if it's an improvement, changing the level of the music and dropping it in and out in the way that I'm doing. But let's jump out to my outro, and I hope to see you guys again soon. Well, hey guys, I hope you enjoyed that. It was great to get out last night and great to put a bend in a rod and catch a couple of fish. But if you've liked this episode, make sure you hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. Check out my latest fishing video down here, and of course my sea fishing playlist up top.